All right. In preparation for another discussion I will be having with Father Nickolaos Loudovikos, I wanted to introduce his book, A Eucharistic Ontology, Maximus Confessor's Eschatological Ontology of Being as Dialogical Reciprocity. And I want to orient us in this first key question that he is attempting to put forth and to answer in the book. And it's about a new understanding of eschatology, and more to the point, a Eucharistic ontology, right? So ontology is a branch of philosophy and metaphysics that is the study of being, of what is, of being itself, being as such. And the Eucharist is the blood and body and the communion of Christ. The term Eucharist is, the root word is Eucharisto, the Greek term Eucharisto, which means to give thanks. It's even used kind of colloquially as well today in Greece. But what is a Eucharistic ontology, and how does St. Maximus the Confessor appropriately situate us? And the answer he's going to be starting to articulate, or the problem is, how can we marry the historical fact of Christ's resurrection with the existential meaning of the resurrection? So a lot of thinkers that he goes and introduces really focus on one or the other, and he's saying that it's St. Maximus's work in Eucharistic ontology that bridges the gap between the fact of Christ's resurrection and its existential meaning. So I'll read a little bit here. He says, can we talk about eschatology in an ontological and not merely historical or existential way? If this is a deep yet hidden desire of the 20th century's eschatological thought, as I shall try to show later on, then we still need to read authors such as St. Maximus the Confessor. But our first surprise would be that the catalyst of this illuminative link between eschatology and ontology is the Eucharist. Western scholars have failed so far to give us an adequate account either of this Father's Eucharistic theology or, still more, any suspicion that this is connected with his ontology and his eschatology. No doubt that the Eucharist has been an original element of Church's self-awareness. Everyone knows that today, but no one could probably articulate this in purely ontological language, being as an event of encheiokenotic becoming, of becoming in communion in Christ and life as gift sharing before Maximus. Later he says, an ontological explanation of Eucharistic understanding of ontology, eschatology now emerges exactly as the ontological realization of Eucharist, of the Eucharistic consummation of ontology. The eschatology of St. Maximus, then, is a Eucharistic ontology, an ontological factor that causes beings truly to be, experiencing even now the certitude of becoming in communion of the eschatological Sabbath, rest. The uncreated breaks the bounds of the created, entering into history. Through every Eucharistic incarnation of Christ, Maximus, therefore, can also help us to rethink and to essentially correct what we call Eucharistic theology and ecclesiology today. Wow, that's a mouthful. So a little bit later in the text, he's going to introduce the question again. In this term, in light of Pangberg's reading of Hegel, he says, in his systematic theology, he develops a, quote, theology of history, in the sense that he tries to reach an understanding of history in its wholeness, not only the facts, but also their meaning. Christ's resurrection thus belongs to history and can be historically investigated, yet it also has a meaning beyond history. But here, the question lies open. In what way can we understand Christ's resurrection as a meaning and not only as a fact? How can we incarnate this meaning in the midst of history without abolishing the latter? How can we, in other words, maintain both meaning and happenedness in history, the latter consummated in the former? How, furthermore, can we reconcile historical fact with the existential approach to eschatology? And then a little bit later he says, let me read here. He says, it is only after the above findings that we come to what I call an ontological eschatology in the beginning of this text. This ontological interpretation of eschatology, which maintains real history while it constantly opens it to its last uncreated meaning, is impossible without making Maximus's decisive step, as this is described in the book. The association of eschatology with the doctrine of the uncreated logi of beings that forms the Maximian ontology. The doctrine of the logi is an eschatological ontology as they form not immovable archetypes, but divine wills, destinations, and existential vocations for the creatures waiting for the human logos response. An eschatological dialogue is thus inaugurated, that is, a dialogue of ontological character as it forms the very essence of beings that will be fulfilled in the end times, but starting from now, as beings are not just given, but also talked about concerning their mode of existence. Thus, the essence of beings for Maximus can be found, in a way, not in the origins, but fundamentally in the end of beings. Beings shall be as they really are. The kingdom to come is the kingdom of the ontological, eschatological consummation of things. But how does the Eucharist enter this problematic? As we shall see step by step in this book, it is only the Eucharist where the eschatological meaning of Maximus's ontology can be deciphered. The Eucharist explains eschatology and is itself explained eschatologically at the same time by and in the doctrine of logi. It's Logoi, thus forming the only way of understanding this sort of deep connection of ontology with eschatology that marks not only Maximian thought, but finally the Greek patristic tradition as a whole. This is why we still need Maximus the Confessor's thought today. We can find there what is sought consciously or unconsciously by Moltmann or Pannenberg, an ontological way of bridging the gap between meaning and history here and now, a way of safeguarding both existential authenticity and socio-historical course, an ontological way of bringing the eschata within history without losing either of the two, a way of mutual verification of both. So that is a mouthful, but I think a very interesting project. And this book was written first in Greek and published in 1992. And I would say that it's potentially more relevant today. So I'm looking forward to getting into more and having another discussion with Father Loudovikos about his book here. And you can check out the previous conversation I've had and a couple of reviews that I did on his book, his newest book, Dialogical Identities. So, yep. Let me know what you guys think. I know that was kind of a lot of really big words, but I think a lot of you guys are really kind of into it. So hope to talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.